The Dr. Ray Podcast is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio. Here's today's monologue with Dr. Ray Guarendi.
You know that the Catholic Bible, and the non-Catholic Bible are different. They have the same 27 books, the exact same canon, 27 books in the New Testament. In the Old Testament, the Catholics have 46, added a couple of additions to some of Daniel and Esther, I believe it is. And the non-Catholics, Protestants, have 39. Now, back when the Bible was being put together, because it had to be put together, you know, there was a lot of stuff floating around. And the bishops had to decide, get together, latter part of the 4th century, really, and say, okay, through the guidance of the Holy Spirit, and through historical understanding, and through the tradition, these are the books of the New Testament, and these are the books of the Old Testament. It's kind of how they did it, you know, they prayed for guidance. Now, you got a logic problem here. If the Holy Spirit didn't guide that process, then you can't be sure you've got the right Bible. You could maybe have a good idea, I suppose, but you're still left with it was a man-made decision. They decided these books belong in here, those books don't. So to absolutely be certain that you have the right Bible, whether you're a Protestant or a Catholic, you've got to acknowledge that the Holy Spirit had to have a hand in this. Other than that, you're just hoping you got the right books. Now, that said, here's the logic problem. Non-Catholic Christians will agree that the 27 books in the New Testament are correct. That's right, they should be there. Holy Spirit guided that. Got 27 there. However, the Holy Spirit got the Old Testament wrong. Back in the latter part of the 4th century, the Holy Spirit, the Catholic Church, hopefully guided by the Holy Spirit, said, no, we have 46 books in the Old Testament. Those are the books there. And for 1,100 years, that's what was agreed upon. Martin Luther, in his dispute with some of the things in the Catholic Church, said, no, there's 7 books in the Old Testament that don't belong there. And I'm not going to get into the reasons why he thinks that. I've heard the arguments. But leave that aside. What you're left with is the Holy Spirit got the New Testament right, but he didn't get the Old Testament right, and he corrected it 1,100 years later. I suppose you can believe that, and I suppose you have to believe it. Because if you say the Holy Spirit was involved in the process, and if you say you are absolutely confident that those 27 books in the New Testament, no more, no less, should be there, then what about the 46 the Catholics have? Did the Holy Spirit mess it up? And then Martin Luther corrected it? Or Martin Luther, guided by the Holy Spirit, corrected it? That's always puzzled me. And when I was on my journey back to the Catholic Church, that really puzzled me. If you say we didn't need the Catholic Church to establish what we call our Bible, didn't need bishops, the Holy Spirit could have used a 9-year-old if he wanted. Okay, acknowledged. Holy Spirit works through humans, and he could have chosen which humans. However, the fact remains that non-Catholics agree the Holy Spirit was correct on the New Testament, but he was in error on the Old Testament. If somebody has a counter-argument to that, I'd like to hear it. The only counter-argument I can think of is, well, that's just the way the Holy Spirit does things. You know, he wanted you to have the New Testament, and then he just decided in good time to correct what those guys did, what those Catholic guys did regarding the Old Testament. It seems kind of funny to me that the Holy Spirit put the Bible together in pieces, but that's what you got to believe. That was always one of the struggles I had when I was working my way back to the Catholic Church. I was out of the church for 8 years, and I was in an evangelical world, and I started struggling with some of those questions. And that one rose high in my struggles.
More of Dr. Ray's monologues can be found on his website, drray.com. Monologues as well as full-length programs of The Doctor Is In can be heard at AveMariaRadio.net and EWTN.com/radio.